What is up, guys? Welcome in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. This is another edition of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. It seems though, even though I've paid for a premium account on X, it is still not allowing me to go live on there. Apparently, I need to be approved, it's telling me. So if you guys are trying to watch this on X, or if anybody comes around to this link in a little bit later, I apologize for that. I thought it would, since I paid for it, I thought it would go ahead and post it on there. Not a big deal, though. We'll get through it. So we're going to be talking some Big 12 football today. I've been telling you guys, I've been trying to get people live, scheduled, set up, so that we can talk about the Big 12 schedule portion of the Mountaineer schedule. Well, I was finally able to land somebody for today's show. It's a team I'm extremely high on. And I think a lot of people are high on this group. They're ranked second in the preseason Big 12 poll. We're talking about the Kansas State today and what a team they've got coming back. And we've got somebody that really is, in a lot of ways, known for being one of the voices of K-State. He's a guy that is, if you follow realignment at all, this is a guy that absolutely crushes it in that department. And then he's also got just a couple other ventures going on. OFBnews.com is something that, if you're not familiar with, it's a newsletter that goes out to all Big 12 fans. And you want to talk about somebody that's the guy to do it, this is the guy. Well, who is this guy? Obviously, we're talking about Jon Kurtz. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, Paul? Appreciate you having me on, man.
No, not a big deal at all, brother. I'm glad to have you on. And before we get going, let's go ahead and get this Magic Shine ad read out of the way, and then we'll get into the video.
Let's do it.
All right. Today's video is sponsored by Magic Shine Auto Spawn Tint in Morgantown, West Virginia. At Magic Shine, your vehicle's care is their top priority. They use only the highest quality products to ensure your car not only looks its best, but is also protected and maintained with the utmost care. From window tinting with top-of-the-line Max Pro Tint or protective ceramic coatings from Diamond Protect, they've got you covered. Drive in today and experience the difference at Magic Shine Auto Spawn Tint, where your car shines like new. Shine on, Morgantown. Thank you, John. Appreciate you for pausing for a minute while we did that. I wanted to test out my new intro somebody sent me earlier. So I put that in one of the little boxes and just hit play, see what it looked like. It's pretty cool. Thank you to Craig Edits for doing that. That was extremely nice of you, man. So, and thanks to Sean for setting that up. Appreciate you guys for being in here. Like I was saying a minute ago, my X account is still not fixed, which is like 70% of the audience that's been watching my videos live here lately. So it's probably going to affect the video, but that's okay. I mean, it's live. You can only control what you can control, John. So people will probably end up coming back around to this side on YouTube when they realize it's live over here. So we'll go ahead and start going. I think I wanted to start. Obviously, you guys had a really strong bowl performance last year, and the kid that played so well in the game, Avery Johnson, is somebody that, although I think, people like us know about, I don't know if the casual fan quite knows how good the kid is yet. It's really where I wanted to start, because I think how he plays is how the Kansas State football team is going to end up this year. What's he looked like in the offseason, and what are your expectations for him?
Yeah, it's a pretty fair characterization, I think, of the season. Like they will go as far as Avery Johnson can take them for sure. Will Howard obviously is at Ohio State now, and it feels like there's been maybe a little bit of confusion about that. I think most people know the deal. They just, in essence, chose Avery Johnson over Will Howard. He is the young gun, but he has a much higher ceiling than Will Howard does as a quarterback. And if you watch the bowl game, you could definitely see why. Or if you watch the Texas Tech game last year when he scored 5 rushing touchdowns, Texas Tech knows all about Avery Johnson and everything that he can do. And he can definitely sling it too. He's also really poised. That was one of the things in the bowl game. Like, he just was not going to force anything at all. So he threw a lot of footballs away just to eat it and move on. So he's pretty cerebral. He's wise beyond his years. I mean, if you listen to him, like he was making the rounds at Big 12 Media Day the other day, he's a true sophomore, I mean, true freshman last year that was out playing the way that he was. So he's really young still, but like his demeanor, he's just so calm. I mean, he's got a really special demeanor where you can tell like this guy just has it, he's got something. He's not what you would expect out of somebody that's his age, 18 or 19. I probably should go look that up, but no older than 19. And man, just cool as a cucumber, unbelievable athlete. He's been really hyped his entire career going back to high school. Like everybody knew he was going to be a big time recruit. Chose K-State over, interest from a ton of places, but Oregon, Washington, and K-State were the final three. And so this offseason, I think a lot of the focus has been bulking him up. He came in, he was pretty skinny last year, so bulking him up, and he does look bulked up. It's also been just learning the playbook, getting more acclimated with the offense, which is a little different this year, and that is one of the question marks for K-State. Much like Kansas, K-State lost their really, really special offensive coordinator in Colin Klein. They've replaced him with Connor Riley, who was the offensive line coach, but then also Matt Wells, the former head coach at Texas Tech, and a guy who worked with Jordan Love at Utah State back in the day, which certainly has aged pretty well and is known as a pretty good offensive mind. I know Texas Tech fans don't love him, but that was him as CEO head coach. He's not doing that here. He's assistant offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So he's a very experienced guy that's coming in to work with him. But all of that, I think, has really been the focus of the offseason for him. And, if the weapons live up to anything near what I think their potential is, I think this offense could be really, really special because Avery Johnson definitely has, like, Heisman Trophy ceiling in his college career. That may not necessarily happen this year, although if you ask guys like Andy Staples at On3, he's really banging that drum pretty hard that it could happen. I think within his college career, he certainly has that kind of a ceiling in him.
And so I think, one part of the offense, I mentioned it as we came on, I was running late. I wish I had more time to look into the team before we got on today, which is why you're here. But I wanted to have a little bit more of a base knowledge than I normally do. Obviously, Giddens is back. You mentioned him. But the Colorado transfer is somebody I think a lot of people are excited about for you guys as well. What's the early talk on him been? Because obviously we all know Giddens is the guy there. But what about this kid coming back from Colorado and his name slips me?
Yeah, Dylan Edwards, man.
Edwards.
Just huge that they added him. I think some of us were looking around after the first wave of the transfer portal like, man, we're surprised they didn't pursue a running back a little bit harder than they did because Dylan Edwards was a spring ad in the portal. And look, DJ Giddens is phenomenal. He's a first-team All-Big 12 type of talent, but as you well know, this league just has about 7 running backs that are first-team All-League type of talent. So he gets backlogged a little bit there. But he is that good. But then behind him, you're going to a really young guy in Joe Jackson that they like, but we just really haven't seen much from him at all. And beyond that, felt a little bit sparse, but they knew what they were doing and they may have had a beat on things. Who knows? Because Dylan Edwards is someone they have a lot of history with. So he's from Derby, Kansas. He grew up playing Pop Warner football with Avery Johnson, who we were just talking about there. They go way back. And Dylan Edwards' dad played at K-State under Bill Snyder in the early years, Leon Edwards. And so he's been on the radar for a long time. He was at one point committed to K-State. Then he flipped to Notre Dame. Then he flipped to Colorado and went and played for Coach Prime for a year and was their leading rusher last year. Now, it wasn't a ton of rushing yards. He had a huge game against TCU in the opener when he scored multiple long touchdowns, but cooled off a little bit after that. But he's got elite game-breaking speed. Just a total game wrecker. You're not going to find many, if any, faster than him in all of college football. So he's like a perfect change of pace back for DJ Giddens, who's definitely fast enough, but he's a little bit more of a bruiser. And I think Dylan Edwards is the perfect kind of complement. The other thing that he can do is really add to the passing game because he's utilized a lot. Like in high school, he was utilized a lot there. And if you just get him out in space, man, ask TCU about how that went in the opener. Like all he needs is just a little bit of a sliver. And so I think that can help supplement the passing game where, there are some more question marks. I think K-State feels pretty good, especially about Jace Brown, who really came on as a true freshman last year and I think is a budding star there. But the rest of the receiver room definitely has a lot of questions to answer. And so Dylan Edwards can kind of fill in some of the gaps between Spelling, DJ Giddens, but also being somebody they can throw it to out of the backfield. And, all you have to do is look back 2 years and see how well K-State did that with a guy named Deuce Vaughn, just getting him out in space and using him in the passing game. He was a huge weapon when K-State was dropping back to pass. So I think that just really added a total different element to the offense that K-State's going to be able to have this year.
How long has Jaden Jackson been? Is he still there?
He is, yeah. So and Jaden Jackson's kind of like
forever.
Yeah, he's been around the college game for a long time, and it is just rock solid. Basically the receiver room is like Jace Brown has very high ceiling potential, tremendous route runner. This is a completely unfair comparison to make, but I will just say he looks to be the best route runner that K-State's had since Tyler Lockett. And Lockett has very good speed, but the thing that was so special about him was his route running ability. And that's how he got open. And Jace Brown can do that, which they need. They just have not had enough separation in general out of the receiver room. Basically since Tyler Lockett left, which was 10 years ago. So they love what they have in the potential there. Keegan Johnson was the guy last year that there was a lot of hype about. He got some votes for Big Ten Freshman of the Year at Iowa a couple of years ago. Flashed major potential. He's got the measurables. He looks good out there, but he basically just battled nagging injuries the entire year, never really seemed healthy, and didn't produce a whole lot. So if you believe still in the ceiling of Keegan Johnson, he's another guy that could be pretty high up the list there and elevate the ceiling of the offense. I don't know, Chris Kleiman, when he talked to us at Big 12 Media Days last week, was saying some pretty positive things about that. I, for one, at least am in wait-and-see mode on that because I was sky high on him last year and felt burned by the end of the year on that. So
yeah,
they have that. And then, obviously, you and I were talking about Dante Cephas beforehand, who's a Penn State transfer, and before that was at Kent State. And he torched the MAC. He was a 1,400-yard receiver in the MAC, but came to Penn State, didn't do a whole lot. Now, some of that, it's all right, how much is that? The Penn State offense wasn't very good. You were breaking in a new quarterback in Drew Aller, who was very young last year. I'm sure that's at least a part of it, but it certainly was an underwhelming performance by him last year. I think K-State's selling a lot of optimism there because Cephas's position coach at Kent State is now K-State's wide receiver coach. So he is back with the guy that he worked with in the MAC, which I think is a large part of how K-State was able to land him. And they hope that can unlock some of the potential. But frankly, I think in an ideal world, he probably is your third option in the receiving core. And hey, they lost a second-round draft pick to the NFL and Ben Sinnott to the Washington.
Thank God, he's gone.
Yeah, he was a beast. He was a beast, but there were whispers in the program. You got to take some of this with a grain of salt, I understand, but there were whispers in the program that Garrett Oakley, who now steps into the role of being the starting tight end there, had a higher ceiling even than Ben Sinnott, at least from a pass-catching perspective. He's not quite as big as Ben Sinnott, maybe not quite as big and tough and physical, but in terms of catching the ball and athleticism, they love him. So they feel good about that, but it's unproven. And I think that's kind of the deal with a lot of these places for K-State, including Avery Johnson. A lot of talent, looks really good. They have high ceilings, but it is in a lot of ways unproven. And I think that's why you saw K-State get skunked on the preseason All Big 12 team. A lot of these guys need to go prove that the production will meet the talent that they have.
Right. I'm curious to know about that offensive line because from what I remember last year, was it Kitley on the left side that you guys had, Willis on the right side, Poitier at right guard, trying to go by memory. And then I've been reading about somebody named Panzer that you guys are looking to possibly fill in at one of those spots. Who are all these guys? And did I get them right?
Well, yeah, so Easton Kilty is a huge transfer that we got this offseason. So that was the big one out of the portal for them. Probably just no pun intended, biggest physically and biggest I would even maybe argue over. It's a tough argument with Dylan Edwards, who was the bigger pull out of the portal for them there, but they really needed an instant impact, high ceiling guy on the offensive line. And that's what he was. That was a really competitive recruitment that they were able to get from North Dakota. and he should step right in. Now, whether that's going to be a tackle or guard, I think is still perhaps a little bit up in the air. And it may depend on if they want to try to get their best 5 offensive linemen on the field or if they just want to go more position by position. But the big thing here is, I mean, they are replacing a lot on the offensive line. They have guys with starting experience who are coming back in, but you're replacing Cooper Beebe, who was arguably the best offensive lineman in the country and a pretty high draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys this past year. And then you're replacing KT Leviston, who was one of the tackles and was another guy who got drafted and is now beginning his NFL career. So you lose a couple of NFL offensive linemen. Connor Riley has done a great job as K-State's offensive line coach, and he's somebody that's been courted many a time, particularly like when Scott Frost was at Nebraska. He's got some roots back there. I think they really tried to pursue him multiple times, but he stuck around, and it's paid off for him now because he is the offensive coordinator along with being the offensive line coach. And the way I've kind of framed him up this offseason is like, he to me is my comp is Matt Campbell. And I say that because I feel like Matt Campbell always when he has a year where the expectations are a little lower, he seemingly always well exceeds those expectations. And then the year where the expectations are really high and you think, man, they could be like one of the best in the conference or the country. Yeah, the ceiling may not be quite as high as you want it to be there, but he's a really high floor guy with the offensive line because they always put together a really solid group. And with what they've done recruiting wise over the last like 3 years, I would say the last 3 recruiting cycles on the offensive line, I mean, they definitely have more raw talent than what they've been working with before, which again, sounds kind of like a broken record. That's sort of the theme of a lot of the team, particularly the offense here. Those guys are going to have to prove it. And Connor Riley will have to prove it while taking on more responsibility this year as the offensive coordinator. But in the past, we have seen him do a really good job of molding together offensive lines, even when it looks like on paper they might be a little undermanned.
So this would be his toughest job, you think, the last couple of years as far as putting together an O-line?
Probably so, and I think a lot of that is just because you've lost – I mean, Cooper Beebe, his entire career since he started playing was basically like – I mean, you can just plop him out there and he's going to be certainly the last 3 years the best lineman on the field, you know, and he can play literally anywhere. They could move him anywhere. So – not having that, I think definitely makes your job a lot harder. Yeah.
And that's where I think we can relate as far as team, you know, because I did put West Virginia in the thumbnail as well, but this is mostly about K-State. But obviously, I think, you know, the 2 best linemen in the conference, you could say, were Zach Frazier and Cooper Beebe, along with a couple other guys. I mean, but they were all both in such rare company. And I think with West Virginia on our side of things, that's most definitely going to be a big deal for us is how do we replace a guy like that? Luckily, we're only replacing one guy of that caliber, and you guys are replacing really 2, you know? So it's going to be interesting. I think, you know, West Virginia recruits 5 of the top 7 guys. So I think when you look at it like that, we've heard several people say this offseason that the offensive line is actually better because Zach Frazier was limited to what he did was elite. But he was not what they call a gap blocking scheme kind of guy. And so he was more of a zone scheme guy. So they're going to be able to do a little bit different, more athletic stuff with the offensive line this year. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball for you guys, it's always really good. It's always top 50. It seems like almost every year now. And I'm interested to hear – what's that defense going to look like in your opinion this year? Is it stronger than it was last year?
It depends. I'll start with, I think the headliner here is Marquise Siegel, who they brought to Big 12 Media Days. He is a safety, a defensive back, and he continues in a long line of transfer defensive backs that wind up going to the NFL. It's uncanny. This will, I think, in all likelihood, be the 4th time they've done it. In the last 5 years, pulled in a transfer defensive back and sent him to the NFL. And they also have Jordan Riley in there now, who's another North Dakota State guy that they're bringing in, who they think is the next in line to do that as well. So they've really done a great job. Joe Klanderman, who is the defensive coordinator, works predominantly with the secondary. Like, he's just been excellent, especially the safeties. And they've been really, really good. So Siegel literally dropped like 5 interceptions last year. And had he hung on to 3 or 4 of them, he's probably an all-conference player right now that has a lot more acclaim than he did. But he just, and we were joking with him in Vegas about that, getting on the jugs machine. He takes a lot of crap from his teammates for it, but he was always in the right place at the right time. He's a really good player. I think they've got a couple of really good linebackers in Desmond Purnell and Austin Moore, who are guys who probably have like all conference potential. Desmond Purnell, a little bit more athletic. Austin Moore, rock solid. They call him the machine. They have some real depth at linebacker now. They got a pretty big pull out of the transfer portal late in the spring window, and Alec Marenko from New Mexico. I think if he can stay healthy, he's somebody that will contribute a lot. And they definitely have some young talent at linebacker too. I know Coach Kleiman was really hyping up Austin Romaine, who got thrown in there and had to play a lot as a true freshman last year, which should definitely help him this year. Their corners, I think are both very good. Jacob Parrish, definitely all-conference kind of guy. Keenan Garber, converted wide receiver who got thrown into the Big 12 championship game 2 years ago after playing receiver the entire year and didn't get burned by Quinn Johnson and company in TCU in that Big 12 championship game. He's been getting better and better there. So I think they feel all right about it. There's not a Julius Brents that they had a couple of years ago who was 6'4", long, lanky, second-round pick of the Colts. I don't know if there's that type of guy, but when you're talking about guys that can be some of the best in the conference, they've still got some of that in the secondary. I think more of the questions come on the defensive line, particularly the interior defensive line. Uso Seumalo did spend some time injured last year, and he's definitely the guy that they build around on the interior of the D-line, but they'll need him to be healthy and playing well, because I think there are some concerns there, particularly about the depth, at least for me. Maybe where they're the most talented in terms of young talent is at defensive end. But once again, the theme, how proven are these guys? They've got a couple of guys like Brendan Mott's been around, and he has put up some nice numbers. He's a guy that started out, not a scholarship guy, had to work his way up, kind of your typical K-State guy. So it's not like Felix Anudike-Uzama talent there, but him coming back did help when I don't know that was a certainty.
Seumalo?
So Uso Seumalo he's the D tackle. He's a D tackle. Brendan Mott, defensive end, veteran guy who's been around a while, has picked up some sack numbers and definitely will help. But what they really want is guys like Chidi Obi-Izor and Jordan Allen to start to get into the rotation at defensive end. Jordan Allen's another local kid from Kansas that they kept home. Oklahoma was in after him, like Brent Venables was definitely trying to get him. And K-State was able to hold them off. He stayed there. Lincoln Riley also made a play for him out at USC. They kept him around. He definitely looks like a beast. And I think guys like that can really start to up the athleticism there. Toby Osensami is a guy that's played some and really is just an athletic freak. I think for him, it's been making sure that he has a grasp on everything that he needs to do. But they've kind of flirted with him linebacker to D end. And it sounds like, if they just make him a rush in and say, go get the quarterback, I think the sky's the limit for him too. So defensive end's much in the mold of everything on offense, where they have a lot of young talent, but guys that are going to have to step up. They've got more experience in the linebacking core and the secondary.
All right. So, and I did read your message, by the way, before we got on. So we're at 6:27 now. So here's what I want to do with what time we have left. First of all, let's just really quick talk about this game, obviously between West Virginia and Kansas State. It's hard to say where each team is going to be by the time that game comes around, but I really do feel in my heart of hearts, without even being biased, I think West Virginia is going to be in a good spot by the time that game comes around, which is about a little bit over halfway into the season. I think it's around game 7, game 8. Can't remember exactly where it's at without looking. Oh, I can just look really quick.
I think you nailed it. It looks like game 7. Yeah.
Okay. Game 7. So, I really do believe West Virginia's got a shot to be 6-1 heading into there. You guys probably have a shot to be somewhere similar. Obviously, Penn State's a huge deal for us. If we win that game, then the sky's the limit of what we can do with this team this year, obviously. So we're going to know really quick how good West Virginia is. Let's assume that somehow West Virginia pulls that game off. What a clash it would be, with West Virginia and K-State in that game. And I'm curious to see how those teams would play against each other since it didn't happen last year. You guys didn't see that iteration of us, especially as we got rolling with Garrett Green and the couple running backs that we had, which finished number 1 in Power 5 in rushing.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think first thought when you brought this game up was there was that graphic that went around the other day. I can't remember if that was on 3 or whoever did the top 10 games of the Big 12 season. And this was not included, but I saw some people commenting that, like, hey, what about K-State at West Virginia? And I mean, I think it certainly belongs as much or more than some of those that were in the list. I mean, look, I came away, and I think a lot of people did, just the vibe of West Virginia Media Days was like, again, kind of feeling like chip on our shoulder. We're still not getting quite as much respect as we probably should. And I think most consider West Virginia in the group of teams that have a legitimate shot here and a claim that they're in the discussion to get to Arlington, because, you extend that list out probably to 8 teams, and they're definitely in that. I don't think there's a ton of doubt there. But when you look at the poll and you see where they were at in the preseason poll, I can understand how that could ruffle some feathers. But man, I mean, yeah, Kansas at Oklahoma State, Iowa State is a pretty tough run up to the game, I will say, just for West Virginia's sake there. But I mean, look, K-State, we're going to learn a lot about K-State by the time that game comes too, because look at the non-con that K-State has. They have to go to Tulane, and they lost to Tulane the last time they played them in Manhattan, and that was the year.
I remember that game very well.
They won the Big 12 championship after losing to Tulane at home. So that is no easy trip. And then they've got a non-con game. It's not a conference game because it was previously scheduled, but they have a non-con game hosting Arizona. And I just did OFBnews.com. If you subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter, you saw I just did an anonymous player poll at Big 12 Media Days. They picked Arizona to win the league. So 16 players, I asked Arizona.
They're definitely slept on. They're definitely slept on.
They are.
I just think, it's just – I don't think a team this good has ever lost. When's the last time a team this good lost their head coach without it? I mean, it happens. I know this has happened, and there's been a team this good lose their head coach. Maybe our West Virginia team, if when Rich Rod left, would be in that conversation. But teams as good as Arizona was last year don't lose their head coaches very often.
Yeah.
A lot of times they stick around and try to butter that bread one more year, but obviously the offer that he got at Washington was it was really hard to turn it down. I get that. But if he was still their head coach, they would have probably got picked second,
I agree. I totally agree with that. I think if Jed Fish stays there, you'd be hearing a lot more about Arizona in that group. Yeah.
And they have the best at a couple of positions. They got the best corner in the league. They got the best wide receiver in the league. They might have the best running back and quarterback in the league. They're really good at a lot of spots.
They are. So that'll be a really tough. I mean, there's 2 tough games. K-State's got to go to BYU. We'll see what BYU is going to be. But then, I mean, they're coming back for Oklahoma State. That's not easy. I picked Oklahoma State to win the league, so they've got that. They'll go to Colorado. They'll go to Colorado, so it's back-to-back road trips. That is one thing here that I think is tricky about this spot specifically for K-State is that they're going to Boulder, which is not, you can get to Boulder in probably 8 hours from Manhattan to drive. It's not crazy, but it is playing in altitude in a new place that you haven't been. And then you're going to have to go the next week and go all the way across the country to the Eastern time zone and play at West Virginia, which is a far trip. It's a really tough stadium to play in. I hate to keep selfishly promoting here, but OFBnews.com, I've got one that just went out and hit everybody's inbox a little bit ago. If you want to read it, you can see my tweet coming up here in just a little bit. But it had toughest places to play. I asked everybody toughest places to play. I believe Milan Puskar was second or third. It was one that got multiple votes. Stillwater won, but Milan Puskar was right there. I mean, in fact, there was one player. There's a great quote there. West Virginia fans, I would highly encourage you to check it out. There's a great quote there from a player who was like, dude, it's just as loud as Texas, and Texas has 110,000 people, and they've got 60? So it was a great quote about how loud West Virginia is. So it's a tough place to play. I've been there 4 times to watch K-State play games there. So I know exactly how difficult that can be. And if West Virginia is having a good season, man, I mean, I know exactly how that fan base is going to be reacting for that game. So I think it's one of the more under-discussed, underrated, difficult games on K-State's schedule for sure. And one other thing I will point out about this game, not only is it coming off of a road trip to Colorado, but it's right before the Sunflower Showdown against Kansas, which is, on paper as of right now, going to be the most hyped Sunflower Showdown that these two teams have played maybe since 1995 when they were both ranked in the top 15. So
because you guys weren't good the year that Kansas was good last, right? 07.
Yeah, 2007. Yeah, I mean, it was really early in the year. K-State was ranked. Kansas wasn't even ranked at that point. So
right, and it flipped.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was.
I remember that.
Not great, but so you've got maybe a look ahead potential, I guess, is the point there for K-State, the West Virginia game.
Hey, just a childhood memory I have. I've never asked you this, and I don't mean to bring up a bad memory, but how often does the Marshall game come up?
Oh, man. I can still see poor Jeff Schwinn, who was filling in for L. Roberson. That was the option pitch that he threw that got picked off and run back either for a touchdown. I can't remember if that guy made it the whole way. I think Sproles got hurt too, trying to track him down and tackle him. Yeah, that was I don't for a while there it was talked about a lot because that 03 team was preseason top 5. We were talking national championship that year. Darren Sproles, L. Roberson, that was a really, really good team. They would go on to win the Big 12 championship, but the problem was they were playing McNeese State the week before, and L. Roberson got hurt. And actually, it might have been 2 weeks before. L. Roberson gets hurt, then they go out and beat UMass with this backup, and the backup, Jeff Schwinn, God love him, but walk-on, non-scholarship guy who had kind of worked his way up, just a grinder, not a dynamic quarterback at all. And that was when Marshall, those Marshall teams were good.
That was when Marshall was like Boise.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That was a good Marshall team. Yeah.
Marshall ended up being tied with Florida for the winningest team in the 1990s. They were that.
Yeah.
They won that much. They won 2 FCS national championships during that point in time before they transitioned to D1. And they had a ton of – and Bob Pruitt, one of the most underrated coaches of all time. He really is. He did a good job there. But that was a childhood memory of mine, was actually seeing that game. Not childhood. I mean, I was 18 or 19. But, that was a crazy game there. And a lot of Marshall fans live off of that, which somebody posted, I had to laugh. Imagine losing to Marshall, West Virginia's 13-0.
Hey, that's pretty funny. And the funny part about that, too, is K-State should have lost the return game, too. That was one of the dumbest ways I've ever seen a team lose a game. They went back there in 2005, and it was not a good K-State team. It was that was Bill Snyder's last team the first time around.
Stan Hill Marshall team.
Yeah, they were Marshall. They were in field goal range. Marshall was set up to kick the game-winning field goal. All they needed, they were down 1 or 2. They just needed a field goal to win. Time's ticking down. K-State can do nothing about it. And they tried to throw a pass in that situation to gain some extra yardage, and Justin McKinney jumped in front of it and picked it off. All they had to do was just run the clock down. They got greedy to try and pick up an extra 10 yards and threw a pick. K-State should have lost that game. It was one of the dumber ways I've seen a team lose. So, yeah, Marshall like K-State pretty handcuffed, man.
Notice that game's not on the schedule anymore.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't play them either, and we get hell for it for not playing them. But it's one of those games where, you hear this a lot, but we beat them, we were supposed to. If we lose, it's an upset.
Yeah.
And even though everybody in state wants it to happen, unfortunately, our administrators, because Marshall wants 1 for 1, we're like, we're not going to go do that. We're maybe 2 for 1.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
John, I appreciate you. We've already ran over since you wanted to leave. So, tell everybody where they can find you really quick. And listen, I want to apologize. Both my X accounts are down. So, a vast majority of my base didn't even see this. I wasn't expecting that because I paid for the premium before we came on today, but apparently there's a verification process I didn't know about. So I'm sorry about that, man, because I wanted to have more exposure. No worries, man. No worries at all. Hit me up. I'll retweet it after the fact and get it out to the people. But the biggest thing you can do to support me right now, I'm doing this Big 12 newsletter. We've got almost 1,000 people signed up for it so far. OFBnews.com is how you can get signed up. It's called Open for Business. We hear Brett Yormark say it all the time. Big 12's open for business. Newsletter where I'm giving you the headlines multiple times a week that are happening in the Big 12. Basically, the pitch here is you try and find college football news these days. It's always going to be run through a Big 10 or an SEC filter. It's not what you're getting here. It's going to be run through a Big 12 filter, and great way to get your news, get analysis on what's going on. Latest one, we talked a lot about this Florida State thing.
Florida State, Clemson, and all that. So a lot to break down there. OFBnews.com. You can follow me on Twitter. It's just at JL Kurtz. JL
Which has been scrolling at the bottom of the whole show.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, Twitter/X. You can find me at JL Kurtz. And then the YouTube channel, it's just Jon Kurtz. Just my name, JOHNKURTZ. So that's it.
He's doing some of the best there. I mean, listen, this guy sat down with, one of the guys of conference realignment in Ross Dellinger and had a conversation. He was at Big 12 Media Days. I'm extremely proud of Jon for how quickly he's grown this thing into a monster and has quickly become, you could point to him and maybe one or two other guys as the guy for Big 12 News. So that's a pretty cool thing.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Really appreciate it. I got to run, but I got to get to my guitar lesson. But I appreciate it, man. I really, really appreciate you having me on and all the support and everything, man. So hit me up anytime.
Will do, man, and we'll get back to you on how to figure out how to get you on X. Get your account looked up to that. All right, Jon, man, appreciate you for jumping on. All right, guys. So I guess he kind of jumped off a little bit earlier than I was expecting. I was going to tell him thank you and everything, but appreciate you guys for jumping on here. This has been a video that just hasn't gotten a lot of exposure because my X accounts, you heard me say, both are, it's not streaming to them. I tried to pay for the premium account today. It just did not work. So, it worked, but it's not allowing me to stream to it still because there has to verify my identity. I just wasn't expecting that. So, oh well, not a lot of people in here, but I appreciate you those that you are in here that have, kept the chat alive and everything. So if you don't care, like the video before you leave, share this out if you have an X account or anything like that. Facebook, anything like that, click share. We really appreciate that. Other than that, guys, not a whole lot else to talk about. That's right, Timothy, and I appreciate that point. At this point, all you can do is appreciate the people that is watching now because you appreciate you. Let's go Mountaineers. Thanks, man. And thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Like I said, I'll get this fixed here the next couple of days, and we'll get me streaming back to X, which is like, it's become, people expect to watch me there now, and a lot of the time. And I'm talking like sometimes 80, 90 people watch from X, so it's a large group of people we're missing out on, which is fine. We never see their comments though. I wish they would fix it to where I could, but I don't know. We'll just see what happens next with it. But other than that, guys, not a lot else to talk about. Glad you enjoyed the chat with Jon. We'll have him back on again sometime. I'm feeling better. Yes, Pokemon. Thanks for asking. Drumbull says, watch your six, brothers. That's good advice. Definitely watch your back at all times, especially these days. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in. We're going to go ahead and jump off here. Thanks to Jon for jumping on and everything. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow or something, and we'll talk about some more. I've got a couple other people signed, ready to come on. So we'll try to get it done. Until then, guys, we'll talk to you next time. This episode is over, and I am out.